Singular honour that we again greet and I introduce to you to watch the forces in the parade, His Excellency, the Honourable David Hurley, AC, DSC, State Governor of the State of New South Wales.
AC, the National and New South Wales Chairman of the Reserve Forces Day Council. Team, thank you very much for your warm welcome, and thank you very much for your very genuine and enthusiastic support for the Reserve Forces as a whole and for this particular institution in New South Wales. I think that was a very wise decision when they asked you to come forward. The Honourable Roman Bishop, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Federal Member McKellar representing the Prime Minister, the Honourable Tony Abbott, Captain David Elliott, MP, Parliamentary Secretary for the Premier for the Centenary event and representing the Premier today, Councillor Angela Vitulpis, representing the Lord Mayor of the City of Sydney, Brigadier Peter Klein, Commander 9th Brigade, representing the Chief of Defence Force, Air Commander Warren McDonald, Commander Air Mobility Group, representing the Chief of Air Force, and Commodore Bruce Caper, Director General of Australian Navy Cadets and Reserves, representing the Chief of Navy, Colonel Moore and your team, thank you very much, and the Parade Commander and all those on the parade, thank you very much for your very fine whistle today and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Government House, which stands on the land of the Gadigal people. I pay my respects to the Gadigal people and affirm my respect for their ancestors and descendants. I'm extremely honoured to have taken on the role of your patron for Reserve Forces Day and the Reserve Forces Day Council. As you're all aware, next year is a significant year for this Council, for the Australian Defence Force, and for its history and construct as a militia force, a volunteer force, for well over 100 years. Significantly, we will celebrate the Liberty Campaign, but as the Prime Minister has rightly said, we need to move our attention a bit more onto the Western Front and remember in detail what occurred over that 4-year campaign in France and Belgium. If you've ever been to Menegate and been there for the last post service, you will understand the real significance of that other outreach of Australian endeavour during the First World War. So I think we should concentrate on that. We will never forget that 62,000 Australians were killed during that war. And I firmly believe that after the war, Australia was a traumatised society. And that trauma, I think, may well be reflected in much of what occurred in between war years and later. As you know, our new nation, when it was formed, had only a very small permanent military force. Reservists formed the backbone of the Navy, the Australian Naval Military Expeditionary Force, the AMEF, and the Australian Imperial Force, particularly that force that left on the 9th of August for New Guinea, mobilised over 2 weeks and sent to war. Many of them, of course, were all war veterans. The AIF was formed in the intervening period events, let me just look at one iconic example. Again, this group will be well aware that the IAF departed Australia in October 1914 for further training in Europe before the Gallipoli landing in April 1950. At home, as news spread after the landing of the rising number of casualties from the Gallipoli campaign, and then as we moved into France, the rising number of casualties in France, particularly after Fromelles, the number of Australians signing up for service began to dwindle. Our recruiting rallies became increasingly ineffective. It was at this difficult time that R.J. Hitchin and his brother Bill, or Captain Bill, a butcher and a plumber from Gilgandra in central western New South Wales, had the idea of organising a route march of volunteers to Sydney, enlisting recruits as they marched. The Gilgandra to Sydney Cooee March was the first and most successful of the Cooee marches, with others following from other areas of the state. The Gilgandra Cooee March set out with approximately 20 men on the 10th of October 1915. The youngest was 17 years of age, and the oldest, Bill, was well over 40. The march travelled through small towns and villages en route, calling, "Hey, come and join us." The idea caught the imagination of the public. Recruitment meetings were held in every town, and enlisting volunteers fell in along the route. By the time the contingent arrived in Sydney on the 12th of November 1915, the recruits had risen to 263. They had traversed 320 miles on rough and dusty roads from Gilgandra to Sydney. They marched across the Blue Mountains to Sydney's Martin Place, where they were met by our then Prime Minister Billy Hughes, a crowd of thousands, and onwards to the Remain. I'm delighted to announce that this original Cooee March will be reenacted next year. And the original participants and leaders, of course, have passed on. Many of them actually never came home from the war, including the Gilgandra leader, Captain Bill. But we will remember them next year as national heroes. Fittingly, 2015 reenactment is planned to arrive in Sydney on the 11th of November next year, commemorating the end of World War I, a day in which we remember all those who have died or suffered in all of our past, present, complex theatres of war and peacekeeping missions. In 2015, we will honour the memory of these men who embodied the sacrifice of protecting and defending this great land, and who, in the spirit of nature, selflessly responded to the call for help from our friends and allies. In 2015, we will again demonstrate our deep appreciation to the men and women of the reserve forces for their courage and their unwavering commitment and contribution to the nation. So therefore, it gives me great pleasure today to launch Reserve Forces Day in 2015. We look for a successful day in the city. I'm sure it will be, because the day is a perfect example, gentlemen and ladies, for us to lead on from. So thank you very much for that. I officially launched the day, and going forward with you to go. Thank you.
Thank you again, Your Excellency, for those terrific words. And the connection with Gilgandra is going to be something very special next year in an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing further other than to invite you to join everybody for morning tea. And we're running actually early in this magnificent city. And we look forward, of course, to calling in mid-year, much between now and then. God bless you all.